The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the individuals participating in the show. All persons described or mentioned in the podcast should be considered innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. This podcast contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions along with adult language, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
On October 8th, 1976, in the Great Smokey Mountains National Park, Tennessee, a 16-year-old girl is on a field trip with her classmates. Though she is seen by many people walking the trails, at some point, she vanishes without a trace. You're listening to the Mysterious Dogs podcast, and tonight we bring you the case of Trenny Lynn Gibson.
Through the years, hundreds of people have been lost in the Great Smokey Mountains. Some for just a few hours, some for days, but in modern history, only 4 still remain missing decades later. One of them, a 16-year-old girl who disappeared on a school hike. WBIR 10 News reporter Leslie Ackerson brings us the story of that teenager in tonight's Appalachian Unsolved.
The styles have changed tremendously.
Welcome to a deep, dark, dank, moist basement somewhere in the bowels of Georgia.
I mean, I had it down. It was going great.
You killed it, man. One take coach was back.
Yeah, and then the dogs just got to go crazy. He's already picked up his squeaky toy that he does not use until we record. So, you know, but if you don't love my dog, then there's something wrong with you.
So we got some good feedback on the old Mysterious Ocean Sounds. Everybody found it lighthearted and enjoyed it.
Well, that's good.
The Winfords had some comments on it. I can only read Mrs. Winford's, and she said that maybe it was whales passing gas. Mr. Winford went in the paint with his comments.
Did he now?
Yeah, he did. I'll send it to you. But anyway, all right. So don't have any new Patreones as far as I can as far as I see. We did have someone reach out and order some decals. We got some new decals going on. So,
well, we had a 5-star review. I don't recall if I've read it or not.
I don't believe you have.
I have?
I said I don't believe you have.
Oh, well, then I will. How about that?
How about you do it?
All right. So this is from Kaladiel. Cadale? I don't know. It's my turn to mispronounce shit. But they said, so good. I absolutely love this podcast. Arlo and Coach do a great job. I love the banters and theorizing, and this has been a delightful addition to my podcast rotation. It's nice to have some quality Southern content I can enjoy as a non-binary person. Thanks for the inclusiveness, and keep it up, boys.
We shall. We shall.
Who would have guessed you would be inclusive?
I know, it's hard to believe. I'm just a grumpy old bastard.
Yeah, dude. Speaking of which, man, I'm just getting old. Like, I have literally done nothing to this part of my body, but it hurts so bad. I don't think I pulled a muscle in my butt.
Oh, those are the best. Is it high on the butt cheek?
It's on my hip.
Yeah. Welcome.
Dude, like, I didn't do anything.
I know. Hey, wait.
I didn't realize just how much I used my butt. It's not just there to look fantastic. It actually has purpose.
Wait till you get to the age where you start bumping into shit, and then you look down, you're bleeding like a stuck pig.
Oh yeah, I don't have that just quite yet.
Yeah. Well, it's a joy to have. Let me tell you. I need a transfusion every time I work on something.
That's why I don't work on anything.
There you go. You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so let's do this thing. Let's kick the tires and light the fires. This was a request, and
we're back on our bullshit.
Yeah.
No more lightheartedness.
Well, we've got some disappearance. No, thank God it's not as deep and dark as previous, but
it's a disappearance, man. It's pretty dark.
It is dark, but it's not as dark as we've been. We're coming out of some of the darkness. All right, so we are talking about one Trenny Lynn Gibson, and she was born on August 17th, 1960 to Hope and Robert Gibson. Now, Robert was a salesman with, I think I read, a chemical company, and he traveled a lot and was gone approximately 2 weeks out of each month. Now, Trenny was the second of 4 children, with older brother Bob being the oldest. I don't think he is a junior, but his dad's name's Robert. He goes by Bob, so we're just going to refer to him as Bob going forward. Now, Bob was older than Trenny by 2 years, and then Trenny had a younger sister that was 2 years younger than her named Tina, and then they had a little brother that I think, was named Miracle. And he was born in 1970. So Trenny was closest to her older brother, Bob, who graduated in May of 1976 from high school. Now, Trenny was actually born in Fulton County, Georgia, and moved to Knoxville, Tennessee around 1967, 1968.
It is a great place.
She enjoyed drawing and reading, especially reading. She also liked to help her mother cook. Now, Trenny was well liked by her classmates at Bearden High School in Knoxville, but she didn't have a lot of close friends. Her closest friend, again, was her older brother, Bob. Now, her family was tight-knit and loving, and they attended the local Baptist church. And one classmate described Trenny as pretty, but not the prettiest, smart, but not the smartest, and kept to herself. Now, depending on what YouTube video you watch, that's totally different from what you get from other YouTube videos. So I'm not going to name names, but there is a YouTube video out there. I think he has a podcast that deals with the Appalachians, and his take on that is 180 degrees different from what I found in my research. But anyway, with her tight-knit family and living in the Bible Belt in the 70s, she came from a very conservative religious family.
No, not in the South.
I know that's hard to believe.
I couldn't believe that if I tried.
She was.
I was trying to think of something clever to say, but I couldn't think of shit.
Didn't get it, did you? Didn't get it.
No.
Now, Trenny was very independent, not very social, but she wasn't a recluse by any means. And Tina, her younger sister, was more of the social butterfly. And Trenny just, kind of did her own thing, was very friendly to people in her class. And she actually worked in Westtown Mall at Morrison's Cafeteria. Come on down. There's a blast from the past.
I'm a little too young for that. I don't know those places.
They were around when you were around. Don't even start that bullshit.
I've never heard of it. But I will start my bullshit, and you can't stop me.
There was one in my town at the old mall, and it stayed open until I was 15, 16. So I don't know when the last time you've been to a mall. 92. Was. I don't know if there's any still open now, but it was just basically cafeteria style. You walk through the line like Western Sizzling. How about that? Yeah. But it was more home cooking.
Have you been to a mall lately?
I have driven by the one at Hamilton Place, but that's about it.
Man, the one in my town is like the saddest thing ever. Like big, huge stores like Sears and JCPenney, when they closed, they just walled it up. So there's not an entrance. There's just an empty building behind a wall. It's got to be creepy as all get out.
Well, there's three, one, two, three. There's 4 anchor stores at the one in my hometown, and I think there's only one still open. So, yeah, I bet it's creepy as, and they did the same thing. It's creepy as crap. So, she was working at the cafeteria to save money so that she could attend the University of Tennessee. There, she was going to major in horticulture, I believe.
Go Vols!
Now, the Gibsons were very religious and pretty strict, especially with their girls. They were not allowed to bring friends over, and they did not go on trips. Now, Trenny had never really been away from home for an extended period of time without any of her family. Now, Bob had joined the Navy after graduating high school and had arrived home on leave on Wednesday, October 6, 1976. Now, Trenny was excited to see her brother because he had been gone since July for basic training. Now, the family caught up with Bob when he got there and had dinner together on Thursday night. And then on Friday, October 8th, 1976, Trenny was getting up and getting ready to go to school. And she had a field trip with her horticulture class. And they were going to explore different plants and flora and fauna during the fall season. Now, the horticulture teacher at Bearden High School was a man named Wayne Dunlap, and he was going to take the class somewhere, quote, spectacular. And he had planned originally to have someone help him chaperone the trip because there was going to be roughly 40 students going. And when he was in the planning stages of the trip, Trenny's mom, Hope, had offered to come along as a chaperone. Now, Mr. Dunlap waited until the class was getting on the bus to tell them where they were going. And that destination was going to be the Great Smokey Mountain National Park. Now, Mr. Dunlap claimed that he wanted to, A, make the destination a surprise, but B, he didn't want any of those kids going to be able to tell their friends where they were going and them follow the bus up there and just happen to be at the Great Smokey Mountains at the same time. Pretty smart on his part. Now, he didn't want the students, I guess one way of looking at it is being able to plan things while they were there. He wanted them to really concentrate on studying what the field trip was intended for. Now, at some point, Mr. Dunlap has spoken with Trenny's mom, Hope, about where he's planning to take them. And then she realizes that the trip was going to be an all-day affair. So she kindly declines the chaperone position. And it seems like she declined at, I think, within a day or two of them going, because Mr. Dunlap had a difficult time trying to find another chaperone, and he never did. So Hope says that she can't be the chaperone because since they're going to be gone all day, she would have to find someone to watch Trenny's little brother Miracle, who I think at the time was 6 or about to turn 6, which we'll get into that later. But basically, Mr. Dunlap's running around asking fellow teachers, friends, family members, and they're all like, dude, you waited till the last second. I can't call in to work. I can't get a substitute. You're on your own. And the kids didn't think that they were going on a field trip because that morning the weather was less than ideal. As Hope drove Trenny to school, it was misting rain. It was a lot cooler than it had been, and it was overcast. They were both sure that the field trip was going to be canceled due to weather. But upon arriving at the school, Trenny spots one of her classmates and asks, hey, have you heard if we're still going? And they were like, yep, we're still going. So she had really not dressed for a field trip, which was kind of poor planning on her part. Never assume anything, boys and girls, because when we assume, we make an ass out of you and me. Now, she basically left her books and her purse in her mom's car. She did bring a sack lunch and was wearing a blue blouse, a blue and white striped sweater, blue jeans, blue Adidas tennis shoes, a diamond and star sapphire ring, and a sapphire necklace. Now, as we mentioned earlier, Trenny had never really been away from her family for an extended period of time. So this field trip was a really big deal for her. Now, Mr. Dunlap obviously did a great job keeping the destination a secret because, from what I could find, only Hope, Trenny's mom, knew where the class was going. Now, this would be a crime against humanity in 2024.
Could you imagine trying to take kids on a field trip
and not telling them where they're going?
Yeah.
How we're just going somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, back in those days, you just get on the bus and go. Shit, there's so much paperwork you gotta do now.
Yeah, you gotta give a kidney damn near it.
Pretty much.
But yeah, keep in mind, this is 1976. So you get a bus driver and a bus, slap some kids on a bus, and then we're driving an hour and a half from Bearden High School to the Great Smokey Mountains. So Mr. Dunlap.
I'm going for my birthday very soon.
Oh, ain't that sweet?
Oh no, we're going to go Pigeon Forge.
Oh, shit.
Redneck Riviera, brother.
Yeah.
I'm going to take her deep in the heart of volunteer country.
Oh, God, I hope she survives. I'm going to tell you something. You know that I am not a Tennessee fan. But I'm going, I wanted to open hand slap this young teenager that I saw. Not only was he a Tennessee fan, he was a damn Tennessee baseball fan. You can't get much worse.
No. I've said it before, man. Baseball players are just weird.
Yeah.
Like, I've worked in enough high schools. I've worked in a bunch. And every time the baseball players are weird.
I concur.
I don't know what it is.
I concur.
They all have like 4 backpacks on, walking through the school with 9 bats and a backpack on the front of them and a backpack on the back of them, and I don't know. It's this weird little tribe, man.
It is a weird little tribe.
If you like it, you like it. I'm not here to dull your sparkle. You do you, boo boo.
That's right. Strap that helmet on tight, sweetheart. So back at it, you've got approximately 40 kids, which I think I saw officially it was 38 kids, the bus driver and Mr. Dunlap. Now, the bus driver back then, due to regulations at the park, had to stay with the bus. He could not leave the bus. So Mr. Dunlap is in charge of 38 kids. Now, Trenny did not bring a She didn't bring a She didn't bring a jacket with her for the field trip and wound up borrowing her brother's best friend's jacket. Now, this boy's name is Robert Simpson. Now, Robert and Trenny's brother Bob were very close in school, despite Robert Simpson being a year behind Bob. Now, Bob had asked Robert to please look after his sister on the field trip. And so when Robert realized Trenny didn't have a jacket, he gave her his plaid jacket. Now, it was stated that the bus arrived at the park between 12 and 12:30 p.m. on that Friday. And when they got to the park, Mr. Dunlap told them that their instructions were to hike to Andrews Bald, and they could observe the plants and trees and grasses and leaves and wildlife, but they were not allowed to take anything or disturb anything. It was just look with your eyes, make a note of it, and we'll discuss it, and you can write a paper when we get back to school. Now, the bus parked at Klingman's Dome parking lot, and as per the regulations at the time, the bus driver remained with the bus. The plan was for the students to make their hike and meet back at the bus at 3:30 p.m. for the hour-and-a-half bus ride back to Knoxville. They were not to take any side trails or take anything from the park, only observe. Now, Mr. Dunlap did hike with various groups of students during the trip, but he was the only one or the only adult on the hike. And the way it was explained in one of the articles was this trail is well defined, but it's not very wide. So you would have little pockets of students, and I think Mr. Dunlap was just going back and forth between them, asking them what they had seen, had they seen anything cool. And the hike from the parking lot to Andrews Bald was just under 2 miles one way. So we're talking about a 4-mile trek. You got what we got here? I've lost my place in my notes. Damn it. Okay. Now,
what are these notes you speak of?
I know.
I didn't even know what case we were doing until you told me. Got you opening a what?
Now, the Klingman's Dome hiking path leads people to an observation tower and takes about an hour to reach the tower. You have to figure that you could push that to an hour and a half if you had some slow-moving groups. And then they ate lunch, I think, at the observation tower and then hiked back. So you're looking at about 3 hours, which is about what Mr. Dunlap had allotted when they got there. So Trenny started off on the hike with Robert Simpson, her brother's friend, and they hiked all the way to Andrews Bald. They actually ate their lunch there. Now, it was theorized that something may have happened between Trenny and Robert at Andrews Bald. That something was rumored to be that Robert possibly could have made a pass at Trenny or maybe expressed to her that he had feelings for her. Trenny did like Robert, but it was only in the sense of considering him a friend since he was friends with her brother. Whatever happened up on Andrews Bald, Trenny decides that she's going to head back to the parking lot after having lunch. Robert tells her, go ahead, and I'm going to, quote, track a bear, end quote. I don't know if that's code for I'm about to go off trail and drop trowel and take a shit or what.
You are so crude, man.
But here's my deal. I don't care if you're 16, 17, 18 years old. You don't leave the trail in the Great Smokey Mountains to go see if you can find you a bear.
He's probably one of those weird ROTC kids.
Oh, wait till I get to his description. You'll be like, well, I retract my previous statement.
Oh, okay.
So my question is, what are you going to do with said bear if you find one there, Slick? You ain't got a cell phone. It's 1976. You ain't got a disposable camera. You're not going to take a picture of it. But anyway, now, according to various groups of students, Trenny was hiking at a faster pace than others and seemed to be walking, quote, on a mission. As she meets a small group of classmates hiking the trail, one student would state, quote, she stopped suddenly just ahead of us and ducked her head slightly to her right, crouched down at one point, and then stepped off the trail, end quote. This would be the last time Trenny Gibson is ever seen. The student in question says, later, I was forever haunted by that moment. And it wasn't that it was a haunting moment when she witnessed it. It was the fact that she was the last person to see Trenny, and it just stuck with her. Now, when Trenny steps off the trail, she would have basically been right in the middle of the entire class. And because you've got the smaller groups are staggered going up and down that trail, and so she's right in the middle of 38 people, basically. She had passed a couple of groups before the one student saw her step off the trail. What I'm getting at is that she disappeared with a lot of people around her. Very missing 411-esque.
Yes, very much so.
Now, everyone had to basically look away at the same time as she steps off the trail for her to disappear. It does seem like she saw something and walked towards it. Probably nothing, but Robert's, quote, tracking a bear adventure leaves him unaccounted for until he reappears at the bus at 3:30 p.m. The one classmate would later state that when Trenny stopped, looked to her right, and crouched down, she did so in a manner that led that girl to believe that Trenny was trying to not be seen. So maybe she saw something what this girl is basically saying is that she saw something, crouched down like, oh shit, I don't want whatever that is to see me. And it could have been like, oh, there's a deer right there. I'm going to crouch down so the deer doesn't spook. I'm just going to observe it. Or maybe she saw something else. Maybe she saw someone else.
How dense is the woods?
Well, I can't find really good pictures, but the one I did find looked very dense.
Yeah. So I'm just saying is how far into the woods would she have to go to no longer be seen at all?
From what I can gather, It was the fall and the leaves were dropping, but there was still some undergrowth. So she could have been less than 6 feet off the trail and not been seen.
Oh, wow.
So it's pretty thick.
So is there reports of hearing anything, like maybe an animal or something?
There was no reports of anything like that. And you've got but here's the other thing. You've got 38 high school kids on the trail probably yakking and yucking it up. So it would have to be a very loud something for them to hear it.
Well,
Now, it was not until the students arrived back at the bus at 3:30 for a head count that it was discovered that Trenny was missing. And here's another thing. There's some shade been thrown on Mr. Dunlap about, did he really do a head count? Well, he's not a dumbass. Yes, he's going to do a head count.
Well, we live in a society now that buses are equipped with an alarm. When you turn the bus off, that's how stupid we are as people. So maybe he did do a head count. That when you turn the bus off, an alarm goes off in the back that requires you to get up and go all the way to the back to turn it off so you don't lose kids.
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, he probably did a head count-wise when they all were gathered around the bus waiting to get on it to leave. I'm thinking he's, doing a cursory count. Well, and that's basically what happens. He gets there, everybody gets there, and they discover that Trenny's not there. They're missing somebody. And then it was stated that Robert arrived at the bus breathing very heavily. Now, this did not set alarm bells off because Robert was a little on what they said back in 1976, the heavy side. He was a little bit out of shape, about as big as he was around. So I don't think he's arm wrestling or wrestling a bear in the woods, much less sprinting up and down the hiking trails. Now, what is peculiar is that they said that Robert seemed annoyed rather than concerned about Trenny not being at the bus. Now, remember, Trenny's brother Bob had asked Robert to keep an eye on her and make sure nothing happened to her. Playing devil's advocate here, he could have been annoyed in the sense that, quote, basically he could have been like, well, why in the hell is she not here? And stupid underclassmen not being responsible. She shouldn't have left. I told her I was just going to go look for a bear. She could have come with me if she'd have just, one of those perturbed situations and really not thinking anything about it.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Dunlap sends a student named Danny Johnson to head back up the trail to look for Trenny. He also leaves the class with the bus driver, and he heads off on a side trail to Double Springs to see if Trenny maybe had gotten turned around and taken another trail. When Danny and Mr. Dunlap get back to the bus, neither one of them had seen Trenny. Mr. Dunlap decides to send the class home with the bus driver, and he immediately contacts Park Services. Now, it is documented that Mr. Dunlap called the National Park Service at 4 p.m. He really did not waste any time because basically they're meeting back at the bus at 3:30. He probably does a head count within a couple of minutes. Him and another kid sprint off trying to find her. They're gone for 20-ish minutes. So within 30 minutes of them realizing that she's missing, they did a cursory search, couldn't find her, and then alerted Park Services that a missing teenager was in the area. So initially a park ranger arrives and he and Mr. Dunlap start searching for Trenny. Then around 6:30 p.m., the National Park Service gathered more park rangers and volunteers. I think 19 volunteers and 4 additional rangers showed up at 6:30. The search was immediately hampered by high winds and rains. And the next day, search dogs, helicopters, and planes made up the search party that would last 8 days and encompass 15 miles. So when the bus arrives back at Bearden High School, Trenny's mother, Hope, is told that her daughter is missing. Hope is beside herself because she knows that Trenny was not dressed to spend the night in the Great Smokey Mountains with temperatures dipping into the low 30s that night. As you would expect, no one in the Gibson family got any sleep that night, and the next day, the entire family, along with some family friends who also had tracking dogs, volunteered to search for Trenny and made their way back up to Klingman's Dome. They would find a beer can and cigarette butts in the area where it was stated that she left the trail. Now, we do not know if that is connected to the case officially, but it was noted that that was the spot where she had stepped off the trail. It's where they see these cigarette butts in this beer can. I'm saying we don't know if it is connected because let me explain something to you fellers and girls out there in podcast land. When you're taking teenagers on one of these there field trips, you're lucky if there's not a damn fifth of vodka in the back seat.
Now, what kids would do that?
In 1976, I could see some of them old boys from Bearden High School maybe slipping some beers in their jacket pockets, and damn, everybody smoked back then. They had smoking areas at the school. So, like I said, this is not, we don't know if this is just teenagers being teenagers. They snuck some beer in the park, had a couple of beers, smoked some cigarettes. So, again, it's 1976.
When the drinking age changed to 21? So
it would have been late.
Could
have been the early 80s. When is that damn news video where you can't drink and drive in this goddamn country? I mean, I work 8-10 hours a day. I should be able to have a beer on my way home.
Yeah, and that woman with the girl in like barely a car seat. She's like, it's turning into a communist country.
Yeah, I love that damn news footage. Oh, I love it. All right, so the dogs tracked Trenny's scent from the base of Klingman's Dome Tower to the place where she went off the trail. They followed her scent until they reached Collins Gap. Now, it is at this point the dogs lose her scent in the middle of a paved road.
Oh, that's bad.
Yes. Now, this road had been described as an in-between road connecting two other more traveled roads. I think it's now actually Highway 441 that runs through the park. But I'm not 100% sure on that. But basically, when I say an in-between road, basically you've got, I think, like two state highways that this road connects. Now, for those of you that have never heard of scents disappearing in the middle of a road, this is a clear indication that said person got into a vehicle and was gone. So there was a couple of tracking dog teams along with the team that her family brought. They were made up of bloodhounds and German shepherds and Labradors, I think. All of the dogs tracked her to the middle of that road independently and lost her at the same sign. So this would lead you to suspect that she got into a vehicle or was forced into a vehicle at that point. Now, as far as the investigation goes, there were a lot of authorities involved. You had the National Park Service, the Knoxville Police Department, and eventually the FBI would get involved because it was on federal lands. Now, here is the rub, ladies and gents. It is well documented that the family and the community believe that a proper investigation was not conducted. As we have seen in cases before, guess what the knee-jerk reaction is when she went missing?
Oh, she'll turn up.
She ran away.
She'll come around.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you another thing. The reason this is not a missing 411 case is because of the scent disappearing in the middle of the road.
That's the reason it's not?
Yes.
Are they assuming she was abducted by a car, someone in a car?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I was about to say, man, this sounds way like a missing 411 case.
But yeah, that's the point at which it gets kicked out of the missing 411 stuff. So the call, all right. They're treating her as a runaway, and y'all know as well as we do, we've documented a ton of cases, and when you do this, it basically handicaps the investigation and the searchers by not getting into the search area as soon as possible because you lose some valuable time locating her. Investigators cite that she was in no visible danger when she stepped off the trail. Well, here's an idea. She's a high school girl that is not dressed for the elements. I would say she is in visible danger when you do not find her ass within a couple of hours.
Yep. I can't believe I'm agreeing with you.
I know it. Damn. I'm going to buy a lottery ticket. Now, investigators theorize that she quote, planned her escape and walked to the 2-lane road where the canines lost her scent and got into a car with someone she knew. It was rumored that Trenny had run off with her secret boyfriend to escape the pressures of her extremely conservative parents. If you will take a second and use a little bit of common sense, you will know that this whole line of thinking doesn't hold water because there's no one else reported missing. No one knew of any boyfriend that she had, much less a secretive one. And if she is going to run off and have a mystery boyfriend, someone in her little circle is going to know about it because
absolutely.
There was no cell phones, no social media, nothing. None of her friends or coworkers ever mentioned a boyfriend, much less a mystery boyfriend. Also, keep in mind, Trenny didn't have a damn clue where the field trip was going to be. When she got on the bus is when she found out. So it's not like she was picked up her cell phone, texted her boyfriend, hey, we're going to Klingman's Dome. Meet me here. That's not happening.
Now, did they search inside Klingman's Dome?
Yeah, they did and didn't find anything. I think the way it was described was her father brought another pair of shoes that she had left behind at the house, and that's how they got the tracking dogs. So they basically, it's theorized that she made her way to Klingman's Dome, walked around the observation tower, hung out there for a little bit, and then we'll get into it. But one of the theories is maybe she got turned around and walked to that road on her own, just lost, or someone intercepted her at Klingman's Dome and forced her to that road. Now, it was discovered that Trenny smoked, but like I said earlier, it was 1976. Damn near everybody smoked, especially teenagers.
That's what the cool kids were doing.
That's right. Now, Trenny did not have a particular favorite brand of cigarette. She was basically just going to accept a cigarette, or if she saw someone smoking and she wanted one, she would bum one off of them. Now, it is pretty creepy to think that somebody is having a couple of beers and smoking cigarettes and waiting and watching right where she stepped off. Another oddity was that on October the 11th, 1976, just 2 days after Trenny had disappeared, Swain County, North Carolina, which is located just to the east of where Trenny went missing, contacts the park, and their county search and rescue is like, hey, let us help. And the commander of Swain County Civil Air Patrol, a man named Commander John Maddox, actually got in touch with Park Service officials and said, quote, I have 40 men ready to search. I have canine units. I have 15 pilots who are willing to dedicate time to this search. I also have 5 helicopters, end quote. He basically had a plethora of resources ready to be deployed at and around the park. And guess what, boys and girls? This is where the family gets pissy because the Park Service says, quote, no, we don't need help. And in fact, if you bring all these men in here, they could disturb the flora and fauna of the backcountry and harm our national park, end quote. Trenny's daddy, Robert, pleads with the Park Service to allow Swain County to come in and help. And they were like, nope, we ain't doing it. So there's a crazy story that happened a year before that we need to talk about. And it involves a guy named Kelvin Bowman. Now, he was another student at Bearden High School, and a year previous, almost to the date that she went missing, Kelvin shows up at the Gibson house, drunker and Cooter Brown, calling for Trenny's brother, Bob. Now,
man, Cooter Brown gets a bad rap. That man does not drink that much.
Jekyll Island makes a Cooter Brown ale, and it's pretty tasty.
It's not Jekyll Island, it's Jekyll Brewing. It's nowhere near Jekyll Island.
Well, that is true, but I always call it Jekyll Island Brewing, and I shouldn't. I know I shouldn't, but I just do it. It's kind of like calling it Kroger's.
Dare you.
But anyway, so this guy Kelvin shows up yelling for older brother Bob. Mama Hope watches this whole thing unfold from the upstairs window, and said that Kelvin basically crouches down in front of Trenny's window by a planter box and then kicks her window out, trying to get into Trenny's room. Mama Hope is like, not on my watch, and shoots young Kelvin in the foot. After he was shot, Kelvin, still drunker than a bicycle, broke through window and tried to come into her room and drag Trenny out. Trenny gets away and went to find her mother. Kelvin comes down the hall after he's been shot by Hope with his hands up. And I'm like, buddy, that may have been the smartest thing you've done. And he's extremely lucky Hope didn't kill him. But Hope calls the cops. Kelvin is arrested and sent to juvenile corrections. After he got out, he threatened to, quote, get even, end quote, with the Gibsons.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you real quick because I looked it up and he has his own Wikipedia page.
Cooter Brown?
Yeah, Cooter Brown. According to the Old Farmer's Almanac, Cooter Brown supposedly lived on the line which divided the North and the South during the American Civil War, making him eligible for military draft by either side. Since he had family on both sides, he did not want to fight. He decided to get drunk and stay drunk for the duration of the war, so he would be seen as useless for military purposes. Ever since colloquial?
Yep, good job.
Make talk good. And
him educated.
Ratings of drunkenness have been benchmarked against the legendary drinker, quote, as drunk as Cooter Brown, end quote.
Well, I think he had an awesome plan.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't fault the boy for trying.
Cannot.
So, back to Kelvin. Kelvin would constantly heckle Trenny at school and harass her. We would call that nowadays bullying.
Yeah.
Now, there were rumors that a car was following the bus the day of the field trip, and many believed this car belonged to Kelvin. However, Kelvin did not own a car. And another story along the same lines had Kelvin driving Robert Simpson's car, but this story was never substantiated. The principal of Bearden High School states unequivocally that young Kelvin was in class on the day of the field trip with no less than 50 students and 5 teachers knowing he was there. So Kelvin was the only other suspect besides old Robert Simpson, the guy that let her borrow his jacket and was friends with her brother Bob. Now, Robert apparently was never totally honest about what happened the day Trenny went missing. In subsequent interviews with the Gibson family, they stated that Robert, quote, acted cagey when asked about it. Now, a little nugget is that Robert's father was the assistant district attorney in Knoxville at the time. He counseled his son and told him not to tell the police anything. And so Robert's father also went to the police and reminded them that they didn't have any evidence that his son was involved in any type of crime, and they could not hold him in custody or question him. The police, very smartly, decided to not piss off the assistant district attorney, and they stopped questioning Robert after that. Now, one unexplained clue is that Trenny's comb was found in Robert's car. Now, Hope would confirm that the hair comb was the same one she had bought Trenny. And she had actually bought Trenny and Tina nice hair combs. And from what everybody said, Trenny adored this comb. Now, I would assume, which I know is dangerous, and we talked about it, but this is not like a comb that you're thinking of. This is more of those like silver hairbrushes that may have had like an initial or her name on it. It could have been pewter, silver, whatever. But y'all know your grandmother had one or your great-grandmother had one if you're that young. They had these fancy-ass hairbrushes back in the day, and it was a big deal. So that's what I'm thinking is what they're describing as a comb. But here's the thing. Robert had not brought his car along on the field trip. So the question is, how did Trenny's comb find its way into his car? One explanation is that Trenny had taken the comb with her on the field trip and gave it to Robert to hold on to while they hiked. He never attempted to return it to the Gibsons. He just held on to it, which is extremely odd. Now, some of the students they were found to be in possession of some of Trenny's jewelry. Her sapphire necklace and a diamond star sapphire ring were found in the possession of one girl who refused to provide information on how she obtained it. Now, I think the ring Trenny actually saved her money up to buy while she was working. Now, according to Robert, when the class was at the parking lot before the hike began, Trenny went into a bathroom and gave her jewelry to one of the girls to hold while she washed her hands. The girl who was said to have been asked to hold on to Trenny's jewelry was not the same girl who had it in her possession later. The jewelry was passed between at least two other girls, and those girls also refused to answer how they acquired said jewelry. It has been said by people close to this case that a handful of people in the class of 1977 and some in the class of 1978 know exactly what happened to Trenny, and they were trying to cover it up by stating Trenny had run away. The claim is she couldn't handle things at home and she had too many restrictions placed on her by her parents. There was one girl who attested to the fact that Trenny was planning to run away. As you can tell, I don't believe that for nothing.
I just think they rely on the old standby of they're running away too much. Like, who really just runs away?
Well, I know it happens, but I mean, from everything I could find,
she had a good life,
and she adored her mother. Like, they were very close, and her dad's gone 2 weeks out of every month.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really don't know.
I just don't agree with. I don't know. You just can't say she ran away.
Oh,
something happened to this girl.
It's the old knee-jerk reaction that, she run away. But I don't know. But anyway, so let's get back to good old Robert. After Trenny went missing, Robert took it upon himself to go into the Gibson house and screen calls from the press and the police. The family politely asked him not to do this. He just voluntarily took it upon himself to be in charge of answering the phone and speaking for the family. Unofficially, he became the family spokesperson unbeknownst to the family and continued to speak for them even after they asked him to stop. The family would be at the park searching, and Robert would just be at their house answering the phone, releasing statements to the press and the police, just willy-nilly.
That's quite strange.
Now, after Trenny went missing, Robert said that if Kelvin had her, that he would have killed her. He doubles down and says, quote, she went off with some horny hitchhiker, end quote.
Yeah.
Because they're just horny hitchhikers running around the Great Smokey Mountains in 1976 with their peckers out trying to find high school chicks.
I mean, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
You're right. You're right. All right. So that's that's the facts of the case. The theories are next. And one is that Trenny was abducted by a stranger and taken out of the park. Another was that Kelvin followed the bus in some kind of car or vehicle and abducted Trenny while on the trail and killed her. Another one is Trenny and Robert had an altercation at Andrews Bald. She walked away from Robert. Later, he catches up to her, and they had a fight. Robert willingly or unwillingly or accidentally kills her. With Trenny disappearing unequipped for the elements, a lot of people theorize that she basically got lost and died from exposure or was the victim of natural predation. The latter being the most popular theory, but even though it's popular doesn't mean it makes any sense, because you would have had, or the searchers would have found a disturbance, remains, bloody clothes, all of that, and they didn't. And they also forget that she couldn't have died of predation if her scent disappears in the middle of a paved road. So, we've said it before, that scent disappearing in the middle of that road basically means she got into a car, whether it was willing or unwilling. And I really don't think she ran away from home. I don't know. I guess the other reason is she didn't take her purse with her. She left it with her mother, and she was not equipped to be out in the elements. She forgot her damn jacket. She had to borrow one. So that's my 2 cents, by God.
Well, I don't know. I just think about like the time frame. Would the person have that kind of time? It was one. I would think to pull it off very quickly, you'd have to have at least 2 people.
Oh yeah.
To force her into a car. I mean, I don't see one person getting out, going around, dragging her, pushing her in the car, just a lot of time, if you ask me.
Oh, I agree. So one of the internet's favorite theories circles back to good old Robert. It has been theorized that he killed Trenny and that he may have had the assistance of another student, or he talked about it with another student. It goes on to say that when Robert and Trenny separated after they hiked together and had lunch, something happened. She was on the trail trying to get away from him. His story of, quote, tracking a bear was a way for him to account for him going off trail to intercept her. When they were at Andrew's ball together, something happened between them in which Robert made a pass at Trenny, and this could have been as innocent as he tried to hold her hand or he leaned in for a kiss, and her coming from a conservative family, she freaks out a little bit, and she doesn't necessarily run away from him. She just gets up, kind of like, I can't believe you're trying to put these moves on me and you're friends with my brother, and decides to walk down the trail quickly. So the theory goes that Robert panicked, thinking that she was going to go tell Mr. Dunlap what had happened. He then gets off trail trying to intercept her. When he catches up to her in the woods, he signals to her. She's not so sure what she's looking at, and that's why she stops, cocks her head to one side, bends down to get a better look. Not really seeing anything, she steps off the trail to see what it is, and it's at this point that Robert surprises her and asks her to walk with him out of the earshot of the trail and the other students. Having had time to calm down, she follows him. He begins apologizing, or, on the other hand, he could have begun chastising her for freaking out, and another argument ensues. This turns into an altercation, and he attempts to grab her or something like that and accidentally kills her. So the glaring problem with this is, that's all great and dandy, but how did her damn scent end up in the middle of that road? And if he did kill her off trail, there would have been some kind of evidence of that. He couldn't have called anyone and told them, hey, meet me at the road. I just killed this girl, because it's 1976. Plus, keep in mind, I already said, he was very winded coming down the trail. He was a big fella. I just don't see him carrying a dead body all the way to where she disappeared, or her scent disappeared, and dumping her into some car. Now, a counterpoint to that is that all of the above happened, and instead of her dying accidentally or on purpose at the hands of Robert, she actually gets away and runs away from him on another trail and gets to that road thinking, I finally made it. And then she flags down the wrong person, asking them to take her back to the bus. And that person's like, oh yeah, sweetie, and takes her off. And where this actually occurred is right on the border with Tennessee and North Carolina. So you could have been in another state gone by the time they realized she was gone. Now, here, ladies and gents, is a new theory that has come from a lady that has researched this case for quite some time. Her name is Laura Reesty, and she runs the Facebook page searching for Trenny. She also has a website called CanadianGirl77.com, and girl is spelt with a U. All one word.
Because she's cool.
Yes, she is. Now, like I said, this lady has been researching this for a long, long time. She's running the Facebook page searching for Trenny, and she states that some distant relatives of Trenny. So Laura states that some distant relatives of Trenny have spoken to her on the basis of anonymity and stated that one of the things that they have suspected from the start is that Trenny's brother Bob, who was home on leave from the Navy, had something to do with Trenny's disappearance. Not that he did any harm to Trenny, but somebody that he was involved with or something he was involved with led to her disappearance. One of Trenny's uncles, who was 18 years old at the time that she disappeared in 1976, was a very avid hunter. He stated that what happened was somebody crouched down close to where the cigarette butts were, and they found the beer can. He said the beer can was half full and still fresh enough that you could smell beer before you even saw the can.
Oh, wow.
He also goes on to state that whoever crouched down had to have been a male because they were heavier and left bigger footprints in the soil. But he also says that someone else squatted down next to this male, someone smaller and lighter, possibly a female who had a size 7 Adidas tennis shoe on at the time, just like Trenny's. So according to this uncle, he and some other relatives find these footprints of a man and possibly Trenny next to each other near where the cigarettes and the beer was found. Again, this is all coming from some distant relatives. They state that the cigarette butts were the same brand that Bob Gibson, Trenny's older brother, smoked, and the beer was the same brand that he drank. So let's pause right here for a second. It's 1976 in Tennessee, okay? There are approximately only 3 types of beers that you can readily get at the time. And there are a ton of people who drink each kind of beer, along with a ton of people who smoke the same brand cigarettes. So take this with a grain of salt, ladies and gentlemen. So back to the story. This uncle gets a baggie of some sort and a twig, and he scrapes some cigarette butts in the baggie. And he gets the beer can into a baggie, and he gives them to a park ranger, and he says, hey, y'all might want to take a look at this. The ranger says, quote, well, these aren't anything, end quote, and throws them in the trash. So we don't know that, or we do know that neither the can nor the cigarette butts were ever tested for fingerprints, which is about all they could do back then. If they had saved them, you could test them for DNA now, but this probably would be so degraded that they couldn't get anything. So this uncle goes on to state that for them, all of this pointed to Brother Bob, because who would Trenny get off the trail for? She might have for a girl that was in her class. She might have for someone in authority like Mr. Dunlop or a park ranger. If Robert Simpson had propositioned her up on Andrews Bald, and that was the reason why she took off and went down the trail alone, she would have been mad at him and wouldn't have gotten off the trail for him, according to these family members. The family also believes that Brother Bob had something to do with all of this, and the question is how he got Trenny to go with him. According to this section of the family, he could have told Trenny, quote, I talked to your teacher and he said it was okay for you to come with me and we are going to go to such and such and do blankety blank. Then something happens along the way or when they got there. And another thing that this side of the family suspects basically they think that Trenny may have been pregnant, and Brother Bob finds out from his mother Hope where the field trip's going to be, and he follows the bus up there. So that's where you get this rumor about a car following the bus. She gets up there, gets away, steps off the trail, finds her brother. Brother takes her to Kentucky to have an abortion, and shit goes sideways and she dies.
Well, I mean, that's not a bad theory.
It's not a bad theory, but the problem is, I go back to, she comes from a conservative home. She loves to stay at home. She loves to be with family. None of her coworkers or classmates or anything said that she was wearing baggy clothes or she was, any indication that she would have been pregnant.
Yeah. Well, maybe she wasn't showing yet.
That's true too. I didn't think about that. Yeah,
early,
you're right.
You?
You're right.
I mean, by the time you're showing, yeah, it's too late.
Now, I did find that basically no one in the area of Knoxville would have done an abortion at the time, and the closest place that she could have gotten one was in Kentucky, so that's why they suspect that she went to Kentucky. Either way, this side of the family believes the key to her disappearance lies with her brother Bob. They also suspect that Trenny's mother Hope knew a lot more than she was telling. She may not know or have known where Trenny was, but she knew a lot of information that she should have made public, or at the very least confided in someone that could have leaked it to the public.
Yeah.
While this is all coming from a side of Trenny's family, it has been rumored that brother Bob was not exactly the most responsible guy. Now, Laura Reese goes on to state and kind of questioned Trenny's mother Hope at some point in her investigation and asked her, where was Bob that day? She did this because, remember, Bob is home on leave from the Navy. Keep in mind, at the beginning of this, I told you that Hope wanted to go on Trenny's field trip as a chaperone, but said she couldn't because she needed a babysitter for her youngest son, Miracle. Well, where the fuck's Bob at? Bob's home on leave. Why can't he either A, take your place on the field trip as a chaperone, or B, watch his baby brother so that you can be the chaperone?
Well, I'm going back to the abortion thing. I mean, if Brother Bob took her to Kentucky to have her get a abortion, wouldn't you think he'd come out and say something by now? Give her mom peace?
Well, that's where this Laura Reese says that her mom knows and knows what happened.
Gotcha.
So I don't know.
That's possible too. I mean, well,
it's a very conservative family in 1976. You're not going to just put that out there, air dirty laundry. Oh, she disappeared in the Great Smokey Mountains. I guarantee you there's families out there. Better yet, I know of a family. This one woman was so conservative, she told her kids she would rather them have premarital sex than drink a beer.
Who said this?
This lady I know that's a very conservative religious woman told her sons, she had 3 sons, told them, I would rather you have premarital sex than me catch you drinking a beer.
And then I'd have been like, how about both?
How about we go for the full chalant?
Let's just do both.
So I can see a family in 1976 thinking, hell, let's tell everybody she disappeared and she really died at an abortion clinic.
It's awful.
It is awful, but that shit goes on. And I hate to say that, but it does. Okay, so back to Bob. He's home on leave. No one knows where he's at. He could have been shacked up with some woman. He could be coming off some big old drunk because he just got out of basic training. But wherever he's at, this side of the family that spoke to Laura Reese said that they are 100% sure that Bob was definitely in the park that day of the field trip because he smoked these cheap cigarettes called Parliaments. And
that's what my grandma smoked.
And you can look them up. They are unique in the sense that they had a triangular, weird-shaped filter on them.
Yep.
And these are the same cigarettes that were found in this little pile right off the trail where someone squatted down. They were also found on the side of the paved road in Collins Gap where the dogs lost Trenny's scent. Now, Laura goes on with this side of the family, and it gets way in the weeds. I mean, way in the weeds. A lot of innuendos thrown out there. So if you are interested in reading more or hearing more about that, You can dive into her Facebook page searching for Trenny. And also, like I said, check out her website, Canadian Girl with girl spelt with a U. So, and then 77.com. Or the Missing podcast with Tim and Lance. Yes, the same Tim and Lance that brought you Missing Mara Murray podcast have 6 or 7 episodes on Trenny, and they interview Laura.
Oh, wow.
Now, they dive deeper into Kelvin and Robert Simpson as suspects. I believe Robert Simpson passed away in the 90s or maybe the early 2000s. Brother Bob, I don't think is still alive. But there's some things out there. I think the Trail Went Cold did an episode and they interviewed Laura about this case. But like I said, we're giving you the Reader's Digest version of that side of the family's theories, but it gets a hell of a lot weirder. So at the time of her disappearance, Trenny Gibson was 16 years old. She stood 5'3" tall and weighed 115 pounds. She was last seen wearing a blue blouse, a blue and white striped sweater, a borrowed brown/orange plaid heavy jacket, blue jeans, and blue Adidas tennis shoes. If you have any information about this case, please contact the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation at 615-744-4000.
You see that shoe? It says Adidas. Still the best football movie of all time. The Program. If you haven't watched it, do yourself a favor. Just go on YouTube and do the highlights. You don't need this love story part. Yeah. For the best football movie of all time, there's 2 different love stories in it. So we didn't come here for that.
We came here from football.
We came here to see Latimer put his head through a couple windows.
I just broke my phone. Anyway. All right, so let's go into what we think happened. I'm not so sure about if you could find that she had a boyfriend, I would be team something went wrong with an abortion.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, because you're not going to sit here and say, well, what's his name killed her when he was looking for a bear. I mean, it's a teenager. He's not going to be good at hiding a body. He's not going to be able to get away with it. And heck, I mean, so yeah, that kind of makes sense to me. I don't know. I'm on your side. Let's just put it that way.
Damn, that's twice. That's twice this episode.
I know. Well, I mean, I don't want to say Sasquatch, even though it could have been Sasquatch.
Well, I think it's feral people, to be honest with you. To be perfectly honest with you, I think she got found by some feral people and they took her ass. Kind of like they took Dennis Martin. Even though they say that it was a very hairy creature that they saw a boy slung over his shoulder, I think you've got some feral people / maybe a Bigfoot clan up there, and that they taking folk. Because this is not the only case. Dennis Martin is the most famous case from disappearing in the Smoky Mountains, but there are some people that have gone missing just recently. I think the last couple of weeks. God dang this phone. Anyway, not last couple of weeks, but I mean like within the last 6 or 7 years, I think there was a person that went missing up there.
Yeah. And just, I mean, zero trace of her. Zero. Sorry, somebody got the zoomies. But anyway, losing the scent, I think the fact that it was on a road really does point towards she got in the car.
Oh, yeah.
But so I agree that cancels out the missing 411 possibilities, but still would like to know for what purpose. I just don't want her to be, I don't know, even to me, if she died in a botched abortion, I think that's better than being abducted and tortured and murdered.
I agree.
I mean, it sucks, definitely, but I don't know. So I'm going to go ahead and say that that's what happened. That's going to be my theory as well.
All right, recommendations.
Well, you're going to make fun of me, but I'm not proud of this.
This ought to be good.
But somebody got really sick last week. But I've been sick for 2 weeks. So I had to watch her comfort show. And now I'm hooked on it. And I don't know why, and I'm not proud of it. But I've been binge watching Dance Moms, bro.
What?
Dance Moms. And I'm like, the reason why I'm going to recommend it is because if you watch it and you can see that these girls deal with this kind of stress constantly. If they can deal with that, you can deal with your bullshit day.
That's true. That is true. All right. So this is funny.
I agreed to watch it because she was not feeling good. And of course you do whatever you got to do to make her feel better. And like, I'm just like, honey, no, that dance is not going to work. Like, come on, girls. You are never going to beat the candy apples if you're dancing like this.
So there is a
have our ass. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
There is a new Criminal Minds out, and it's on. I think it's on Paramount.
Yeah, dude, I'm still really trying to finish the whole series. There's so many shows of that show.
Yes, there is.
400 episodes.
There really is. Yes, there is. It's a great show, man.
When I first watched it, I'm going back through it now, but when I first watched it, I kind of got disenchanted by like, eventually it's no longer them tracking serial killers. It's serial killers tracking them, trying to kill them.
Yeah.
It's like, and then one dude gets framed in Mexico. And I'm just like, come on, this is getting too much. It's too
There's too many CSIs out there. Just bring it on home to Las Vegas. All right, Coach, you got anything else?
You know I don't.
Deuces.